So this is just audio, it's not recording anything
sure.
else. Today is October 8th, 2013, Tuesday, and 1 o'clock, with interview with Miss Rose Kosanovich, at one time the English section of Voice of Canadian Serbs editor and the writer of articles as well for Voice of Canadian Serbs, am I right?
Yeah, oh yes.
Yes,
And editor, right, yeah.
Right, also the editor of the 29th annual SNF Golf Tournament publication that was issued for the purpose of reflecting the event organized by Serb National Federation here in Windsor. That's the only thing that we have in our collection that you participated in editing, I guess.
Oh, there are a number.
There's probably more, right? So I was hoping maybe in this conversation or afterwards to obtain the list of things that you wrote.
I will,
that would be really nice to have.
I will prepare the list for you.
Perfect.
Because there's numerous. I was always called upon to edit everything that was coming out of the community, you know what I mean?
Well, I was told when I started my research on the writing and publishing activities of Serbs in Windsor and the region, I was always told to go and talk to you because not only that you were writing for the Voice of Canadian Serbs newspaper, but you were also editor, but you also, from what I heard, are graduated in journalism?
I have a Bachelor of Journalism degree from the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, at Columbia, Missouri.
Okay.
It's the only journalism school that puts out a town paper. In other words, we students publish or the writers for the local paper, Columbia, Missourian.
Okay.
And I graduated in 1949. So I have a BJ, it's called Bachelor of Journalism.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you were born, how did you come to Windsor and why?
All right, certainly. I was born in East Chicago, Indiana. My father was from Europe. He came from Gomedia, which is in Lika. My mother was born in East Pittsburgh. Her parents came from the same area as my father's parents came from. And they were married in 1920 in East Chicago, Indiana, in the Serbian church there, St. George. That's my Slava. I graduated, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast.
No, that's fine. I'm just writing the
sure.
notes for later.
Sure,
but,
all right.
You go
I
ahead.
graduated from high school, of course, in East Chicago, and then I went on to journalism school in Missouri.
Why did you decide to study journalism?
I don't know, but it's interesting. A lot of Turboviches, that was my maiden name, they all seem to write, you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah, just for local papers, for whatever. I think because I was near Chicago, I had all those newspapers, and I just thought it was interesting, and it would be interesting work, and I've found it so, and just enjoyed my work every day, which was really great.
It's very significant because that's when you're
so
most creative.
Yeah. So when I started out, I tried to get a job in a local paper, which I didn't, obtain. So then I went to Texas. I got a job in Texas, and I was in San Angelo, Texas. But it was less than a year because a job opened up at home, So I went back and I worked for a paper there, a local paper called the Hammond Times. And it's East Chicago is right next to, it's on the borderline of Illinois, and it's in Chicago. So, we were always in Chicago, but let's see I'm not getting sidetracked. So I was working for the Hammond Times in Hammond, Indiana, which is just right out of Chicago. And then I was Judah, my late husband, Judah Kosanovich, was living in Windsor, Ontario. And a girlfriend of mine said, Rose, come to the SSF, that's the Serbian Singing Federation,
Right.
concert in Detroit. And I said, oh, Milka, I don't want to go, I don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But she spoke, come please. So I went with her, and that's where I met Judah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's from, and we married, and then I moved to Windsor. That's how I came to
What
Windsor.
year was it? What year was it?
We were married in 63.
Okay.
1963 in East Chicago. And, I was going to say Judah is from Ploshki in Lika, so he's from the same area
Yep.
as my father was, and my maternal grandparents also.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came to Windsor, I tried to get a job at the Windsor Star, but I didn't succeed. So Mr. Bullard asked me if I would write for and start this English section
Mm-hmm.
for the Voice of Canadian Serbs. So that's how I did that. And then later, I started that in '65,
Mm-hmm.
and I did that for several years. And then when I had my second child, I left the Voice of Canadian Serbs. But I was working part-time at the library. I worked for the Windsor Public Library
Mm-hmm.
as a librarian's assistant. I'm not a librarian, but if you had a university degree, you could.
I was one too in London,
Oh,
Ontario.
were you? I love that job. So I always said I was very lucky. I had the two most interesting and enjoyable work.
Yeah, it
the
is.
newspaper and the library. I loved it. So I was working for the library, and I went to the opening. There was when they built the Windsor downtown library. I went to the opening there,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to, somehow or other, I was introduced to the publisher of the Windsor Star. I suppose because I had been a newspaper person, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, we are going to start a new section at the Windsor Star called Tuesday. It's going to be Tuesday, a little supplement with just local news.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we're looking for someone to write
Go ahead. I'm just
we're
looking.
looking for someone to write a column, just a sort of fun kind of column, like what's happening around the house and challenges of the raising children,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever you might find interesting or might want to write about. And he said, how would you be interested? And I said, I certainly would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a freelance writer for the Windsor Star.
Right.
They would also call me when they did send me out on different assignments,
Mhm.
and then pay me, just
Per article, I guess.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. So I did that for a long time. Then I was a librarian's assistant I retired from there, but for a long time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
20 years or something.
Wow.
So I was very lucky always, because after I retired from the library, you retire, and then if you want to be on a supply list,
Oh, you can.
so I did that for several years,
Uh-huh.
and I enjoyed that too, because I thought, this is great, you just work a couple days a week.
Very, yes, it's
Just
not
a couple
no
days a
pressure
week.
kind
Yeah,
of job.
right.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
I loved it. You saw the new books, and it's stimulating, really. Isn't
Yes,
it? You talk
very,
to people.
exactly.
I like doing that too.
So basically, did you write for any other newspapers?
I forgot there was a Mellis newspapers when I first came to Windsor. That's right. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's called MELLUS. It's in Lincoln Park,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a number of small community newspapers.
Okay.
So we put out weekly newspapers for a whole area out there.
Okay. Were you working in that newspaper as editor or writer or?
Is reporter.
Reporter,
Yeah,
reporter. Right. Okay.
I forgot to say about the Windsor the Hammond Times. I started out in what they used to call, which no longer exists. They call them society pages. You wrote about weddings and who went where, when, and then later, after a couple of years, I was put on the news side. So I would go to the police stations and, the firehouse and
do the serious news, right?
Yeah,
as they call it.
News desk.
Wow.
Not the society desk, but I had to go to town hall meetings.
You were everywhere.
Report on those.
That is really exciting. Seriously,
yeah, it was fun. Yeah,
It's probably something that gave you excuse to observe life in places where an ordinary person wouldn't.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know, but I enjoyed all my work. That's why I say I was very lucky.
Did you save a lot of your articles that you wrote throughout life?
No, my relatives did more than mine.
Awesome.
Yeah, one of my aunties when she died, I found a whole bunch of articles from the Hammond Times that I had written.
Well, that's
and
wonderful.
Like I say, Mr. Bullard gave me this, so that was good. See, this gives you some really good information. It tells you when this other person started. Where was I? Just saw it here. Where did it say 46 here? You see, the first section was
okay, I was convinced that it was in the 60s that started.
No, so this was me in the 60s.
Okay.
So this was person, I don't know how long this lasted.
Mm-hmm.
But I always thought, like I said, I was the first, but no, he was the first.
I'll double check that.
So that's good. And then I saw, did you turn that off or no?
No, it's still on.
Oh, it's still on.
Mm-hmm.
What did I see here? Oh, I just wondered why I had marked that. Well, this is...
Well,
Here's more, you see, here's some Serbs, maybe that's why, I don't know.
Maybe.
See, here's George Vujicic.
Uh-huh.
And here's Father Familian, had the most gorgeous bass voice.
Uh-huh.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, no, that's Father, that's Father, let's see what we have here. So if you want to, I could leave this here if you want. Maybe it's something about the church. I don't know.
Okay, well, when you came...
See, look at these hotels here, Lakeshore Tavern, but these are all over Canada.
These, when you moved to Windsor in 1963, after you were married, how did Windsor look like? How did the Serbian community appear to you? What were your first impressions?
Serbian community. Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to say we just had a church. I can't remember when this it was. I don't know what to say. Very much like, I guess, the church that the community I came from. At home. Mm-hmm. There was the choir. There was a church all the time. My late husband. Maybe you've heard about him or not, but he was one of the 50-year choir members, so our whole life evolved around the choir. He was president of the choir for 9 times. Wow! And not only that, he was very active. Oh, we went all over with the singing, Serbian Singing Federation, because of Judo's activity.
Okay, and Serbian Singing Federation, is that North American organization or just American?
American and Canadian.
Oh, it is for both.
Yeah,
okay.
And Judo, he got the first festival. Each year they have a festival where all the choirs come together. Mm-hmm. You know about that?
Yes, I heard.
In different communities. Mm-hmm. So we were always in Cleveland or Toledo, because when I first came here and the choirs were the federation was more active. Each choir had a spring and fall concert, and they visit one another. Mm-hmm. So you go all over. You'd go to Toledo. You'd go to Chicago. You'd go to Milwaukee. You'd go to Canton, Ohio, or we're in West Virginia. So everywhere, So we were busy with that.
Okay, but can you tell me a little bit more about Windsor community? The way,
I was trying to think.
Yes, the way. I mean, it is it was probably an easier transition for you than for someone who came from the old country and encountered a colony
That's
here.
why I say it was pretty
It was
much
a similar
the same
lifestyle, right?
Oh yes,
Okay.
very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
As far as the Windsor as a city, how was it back then? Was there a lot of jobs? Was there not a lot of jobs? How did it appear to you?
It was okay then. It was fine. It was fine. But
Mhm.
my husband kept telling me how tough it was in the 50s for...
Yes, people say.
Yeah,
for auto industry.
exactly.
Okay.
But when I came, things were booming, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the Serbian N&D store. Everybody was going there all the time. And I would say the community was thriving.
Thriving at the time.
at that time.
Okay.
You know?
Can you tell me then, you said that Mr. Petar Bulat has asked you to write for the Voice of Canadian Serbs.
Correct.
He was, from what I understand, a part of the editorial board as well as a president of Serbian National Shield Society of Canada for a while, and he was involved with the printing and publishing pretty much the entire 40 years that Voice was here, right?
Right.
So who else was active here in the editorial board aside from him at that time?
Professor Kosanovic.
Rade Knježević.
Yes,
okay.
yes, I couldn't get his first name. Yes, he was the editor. I was English editor. He was, I guess, what they call him editor-in-chief. I really can't recall.
Okay.
He was a fine gentleman. Fine.
Was there? I know that.
Fedor Rajic was there at the time.
Okay, Fedor Rajic. Milorad Gaćiša, who was the administrator of Avala, I believe.
Yes.
He was on the other side of the activities.
Yes, right.
From what I understand, Mr. Rade Knježević was living in England until he decided to move here and take over the editorship of the Voice of Canadian Serbs between 1961 and 1974.
That's probably
I believe.
Correct, yes, because he was there when I was there.
Right.
That was in the 60s.
Okay, and then so I'm trying to imagine how was the hierarchy of who was doing what in the actual newspaper part of the production.
Professor Kosanovic, as I call him, he did all the writing, and Mr. Bullock was the from I'm sure Professor Kosanovic had nothing to do with the business and end of it, and Mr. Bullock was in charge of all that.
Okay. But what was he? I mean, there has to be, every newspaper has some kind of editorial policy.
Oh, it was between those two, and I would say between Mr. Bullock and Professor Kosanovic.
Okay, because from what I understand, the Voice of Canadian Serbs was the official medium of information for the Serbian National Shield Society.
Right. So now they may have had something to do with, I don't know.
Okay, so
the innards of that, how that worked.
Yeah, it was really interesting for me to see because I was able to read a lot of articles from the 50s and the 70s at random. I didn't have a chance to study every one, but it seems that it's during the certain years there has appeared more political studies on communism versus democracy, and then in some other years there was more reporting on Serbian communities throughout Canada and United States, mostly focusing on local events that were interesting.
That's all I had on my pages, really. The English section. I had no political agenda whatsoever, or was asked to participate in that.
So it was, your section was mostly commentary on the Serbian communities throughout North America.
And try to encourage other communities to send articles about what was happening in their communities.
Mm-hmm.
And how difficult that is to get people to send information. But, I would print whatever I thought was suitable.
Okay.
Did a lot of rewriting, of course.
Did you get, let's say, for the entire year, roughly topics that you needed to cover, or was it more of at your discretion from issue to issue what you'd like to cover in your section?
Well, I just appeal to all, communities, Serbian, to send information in.
Mm-hmm.
What I found suitable, I would put in. It was mostly local news,
Okay. Because I would imagine, from what I was able to talk to many different people, and including
Yes.
Mr. Gajiša now just recently, his interpretation on what the attitude of the editorial board for the Voice of Canadian Serbs was that they tried to raise the awareness of the Serbs throughout diaspora on political problems, social problems, whether from homeland or that Serbs, when moving from homeland anywhere else, had. So that they tried to include as many possible communities with different ideologies, that they tried to sort of raise the awareness amongst the Serbs what type of actual problems exists and consequences of their migration. And also, he said that they were trying to, that was his impression, of course, that the editorial board throughout decades was trying to represent the Serbs on a more elevated level in the face of other communities here in Canada.
Oh, of course.
Would you agree? Would you agree with that? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I really didn't get into any of that.
Okay.
I suppose that they had all that agenda, or aspiring to those. I was just doing this, as I say, part-time, and
Mm-hmm.
it was more like local news again is all I could say.
Okay.
In the different communities.
Okay, so what would you say then when you were editing the English section from 65 to 67? How did the community breathe then? What were the most significant events that you can remember from that time that you wrote about?
My goodness, I can't remember. We had this terrible rift, going on that which really didn't influence. That this church split at that time.
Ah, yes.
We were having so much difficulty with that I don't think anybody concentrated on much else.
So that was probably the strongest topic
It
of
was
most
terrible.
conversations.
It was just, you can't imagine how, not only topic, it was such a terrible division. Did you hear that they were picketing the church at one time?
Yes, I
Yeah.
heard a variety of stories, and I
Terrible,
still lack a
terrible
lot of
thing.
information, but
Yeah.
people, whoever...
Families were, didn't come to blows physically, but, weren't speaking. It's a terrible thing. So other than that, I can't really remember, but what else was, you said like the highlight, or what was going
highlight
on?
of that
Yeah.
time, yes.
I try and think of what was going on as far as, I really can't recall right now.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, yes, when I spoke with a good number of elders of the community, that
division
was
started in 60, George,
3 or 4.
It started in 63. George and I went to when we came back from our honeymoon, it all exploded. As a matter of fact, Nikola Stepanovich lived behind my house in Indiana Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the fellow he was an attorney in East Chicago, Serbian, of course, and he, I think, sort of got people behind. He was for Dionysia, or he was supporting him, or he was backing him up, and then all the people who followed Nikola, were on that. And so I know exactly when it happened. It was 63. Everything just exploded.
But people refer to that time as really terrible for family divisions.
Oh yeah, I had family didn't speak.
Yes.
My aunt told her daughter, don't. I think we better not see each other for a while.
My
They
goodness.
didn't speak.
There was so much passion about
that
this
much,
division.
exactly. Yes, that much.
Whoa.
That much.
I would assume
In
that
fact, My sister, as it turned out, like they would say, this side or that side.
Mm-hmm.
Or she didn't put this on the thing, but she could never get over it. She never got over it. You know what I mean? Like she's still.
From
so her
the-
dying day
right,
said,
right.
I said, Anna, let it go. Or what? She said, oh, just don't. We can't talk about this. Could you
It's in
imagine
human
so many
nature.
years? Yeah.
I can. It's in human nature to decide what you're going to be impassioned for, and usually it's politics. It's not.
It's politics
yes.
or religion, maybe.
Religion
and or.
and or yes. Usually it's one of the two centers
Yeah,
around which we pivot.
And all the wars actually,
Started because of that. Yes.
Isn't that true?
Yeah,
Through
yeah.
history, throughout history.
Okay. Well. That's a sad topic for maybe another discussion.
Oh, indeed.
But let's return to
I was gonna say,
the writing. Even though you were not involved necessarily with Avala publishing and printing, because Avala publishing and printing and Voice of Canadian Serbs shared offices,
Exactly.
you were probably aware of some of the activities on that side as well, while you were
Well, what I
working
feel to
there.
tell you, Tanya, is this, and this is probably why I don't know anything about the inner workings there.
Mhm.
You see, I was at home with my children, and I just did this at home, and then I would take it
okay.
into,
Okay,
to the office.
for the submission.
So yeah, I
Mhm,
never
mhm.
was sitting there, working there.
Okay. Do you remember, because we found a number of archival photographs of the printing presses
Oh
and
yes.
some of the visits, but we don't have the office interior photographs for some reason.
Oh,
not in our
okay.
collection.
Oh, I can remember exactly how it was.
How did it, and some people who I've interviewed earlier, they say, oh, I remember the smell, but I cannot remember where the tables were, for example, or
Oh,
where the
my.
writing typewriters were. So when I showed them some of the typewriters from those offices,
yes,
right?
Yes.
They say, oh yes, but I still, So it was always a description that lacked details.
Oh.
Can you maybe describe how it
Sure, you
looked like?
came in and there was a outer office, like a counter at the top. You come in this door and you come. There's one room, right? And there's
Mhm.
like a counter. So people came in to pay as their dues or whatever,
Mhm.
or even. Then there were a couple desks. Okay. Then Professor Kosanovic had the next office.
Mhm.
He had a separate office.
Okay.
And the printing presses and everything else were on the left side.
Sorry.
It's all right. That's okay.
Do you remember, in my research, aside from Voice of Canadian Serbs that existed in Windsor during a long time, there also has been a Yugoslav Observer and Democratic Thought done by or edited by Fedor Rajic and Adam Pribicevic, 55, 56. Has there been any other newspaper?
50, you mean?
1955,
Oh, really?
1956,
Oh, I
yes.
didn't know that.
Yugoslav Observer was supposed to be in English only, but I think it lasted only 1 year, and we don't have it in our collection. But we do have the Democratic Thought, that two of them really specifically, well, it was in Serbian, but specifically talking about the political issues back at that time in former Yugoslavia and how the diaspora experienced them observing from outside. But has there been any other newspaper in the Serbian community?
I've never seen one. If they have,
No.
no.
Somebody photocopied all of the 1 year worth of Democratic Thought or Demokratska misao and bound it like this. And we have it in the exhibition
is that
space.
right? Oh, I
Yes.
haven't seen that.
So I was trying to find out, has there been any other newspaper publication, regular publication that Serbian community was producing
Right.
at any given time? Because I know there has been not only divisions within the church, but also divisions based on ideology between Srpska kruna and Jugoslovenska kruna.
Oh,
But that was
yes,
probably before your time, before you
yes,
moved to
yeah,
Windsor.
I've heard about that. Yeah. No, I don't know if any papers, any
Okay.
publications.
Okay, and then the Četnički pokret or the movement of Ravna Gora, they probably all moved to Hamilton.
Oh, I see.
And had their publications there, because I haven't encountered any.
Yes, there is. Isn't there something called Serbia?
Yes, I have found that.
I just remembered that.
I'll show you. I have it, I think, here. But just for 1 year's worth.
That's okay. We don't have to rush. Don't rush on my account.
This is the one. But I wasn't
Oh,
sure
yes,
if this
yes.
is printed
We
here.
used to get that at home. I think Judo used to get that. I think it came from somewhere else. Doesn't it tell you here? What does it say? Post office? What? No?
Windsor, Ontario.
Oh, well.
So that was a
I thought
mystery
it-
to me.
Is this not from Hamilton now, maybe? I wonder if they still have this paper. I think they do. No, I believe they do.
But that it is in Hamilton, right?
Oh, I'm guessing, but why does it say
Serbian Chetniks newspaper, Serbia.
It says
P.O.
Serbia.
Box.
It says post office.
Yeah.
What
And
is
this
that?
is 1971. So this is fairly recent.
We used to receive this paper. I'm sure my husband used to get this.
Because it was really, I mean, online, it is very difficult to find anything about this. So I'm assuming if it was coming out or if it's still alive,
still,
as a
yeah.
paper, then it doesn't have anything to do with the online distribution.
I will find out for you. My brother-in-law's still living. He's 94.
Mm-hmm.
And Stevo knows. Oh, everybody knows Stevo. That's another story.
Mm-hmm.
If this paper is still in existence, he knows.
But yeah, just some kind of lead
He
that I
knows.
can have,
He will
because
know.
it would belong into the scope of our
Because he is the writer.
project.
So when you talk about writer, man, people still to this day call him he just quit writing.
Uh-huh.
They still call him from Zagreb, Belgrade. Oh yeah, you asking
Really?
about Stevo Kosanovic.
Stevo Kosanovic.
Everybody
Okay.
knows his name and because of his writing,
Mm-hmm.
and people keep calling him and interviewing about previous articles he has written. He's got macular degeneration now. He quit writing a couple of years ago. But they call him all the time.
But where was he writing? Where would he read him?
All sorts of I'll ask Dale to give me publications, and
Mhm.
like some of his articles are in different. I can't think of the word now. What is it? Anthologies there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if he gives me the names, you can
Please,
look
that
them
would be
up.
interesting, because I didn't know anything about him, and
Oh, you haven't heard about him?
no, but
They
I'm new. You
That's
mind
okay.
you?
They called him his name from the war was Yabuchar.
Yabuchar,
Yeah, that was his. What do you call
Nickname.
that? Yeah,
like a
he
fighter's
was the
nickname?
commander. Yeah, he was.
Ah.
Yeah. So that was. So
Wow.
people know of him. Anybody in Windsor, everybody in Windsor, if you just mention his name, you know what I
Okay.
mean, would know him.
Okay.
So So he'll know about Serbia. I'm getting off the track here.
No, that's fine.
But Steve would know. Yeah.
That would be wonderful to know, because this would belong into the scope of our digitization project.
Yeah. Oh yes.
And because we have only several issues from 1971, I
Oh,
think it's all
my.
the copies, same copy.
Right.
It would be nice to be able to collect more of this.
Oh, of course.
And just because of the history of certain cultural and political organizations, the way they existed and what they propagated in Windsor, I can't speak for the others, I assumed that they also had some kind of information medium to propagate their ideas or activities.
Right.
That's why I asked you, were you aware of anything? But perhaps in the 60s, things were already well established as far as the newspapers in Serbian language, that maybe there wasn't any after because the 50s
I don't
were the
think
most
anymore.
turbulent.
Yeah.
Well, how about, do you remember, has there been any other contributors for the English section of Voice of Canadian Serbs when you were the editor that lived in Windsor and that
in
wrote?
Windsor.
Yes.
trying to think of anybody who went there. I don't think so. I would get, information and rather articles from, different Serbian communities across the United States and Canada, but not in Windsor.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember, for Voice of Canadian Serbs in general at that time, has there been steady or reporters that were full-time employed for Voice of Canadian Serbs?
No.
No?
No. We're talking about English now, right? Yeah.
English and Serbian language. Has there been someone that was a designated reporter for Voice of Canadian Serbs?
No.
Okay.
No, all the writing was done by Professor Kosanovic and myself.
I see. Okay. Do you know... okay, well, I was asking about Avala, and you didn't necessarily
really
participate so much. Okay.
Anything about that?
Let's see. Editors that I have that were the editors of Voice of Canadian Serbs throughout, between 1953 and 1983, Adam Pribicevic, Pero Bulat, Božidar Markovic. I mean, they're not in chronological order, probably.
Right. I don't know any of those.
Do you know any of them?
No, I don't. I know Velimir Toshkovic. I knew him.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Ago Markovic and Milorad Gačeša and Bora Dragašević.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me maybe a little bit more about Mr. Velimir Toshkovic as an editor?
Oh, I don't believe he ever wrote anything for the paper.
No?
As far as that, unless he wrote some things for the Serbian, I wouldn't know.
The only thing that we have in our collection is that he was one of the editors for Pola veka na Srpskoj njivi. It's like an anniversary book for the Voice of Canadian Serbs.
Perhaps.
And in collaboration with Milorad Gačeša and with Fedor Rajic. Three of them were.
Did Mr. Toshkovic not write a book of his own about his war experiences?
Maybe he did, but we don't have it listed, or we don't have it in our collection. We gathered everything that we have in our collection from the resource library, basically. If there is more, I'm not necessarily aware of it.
Again, I will ask my brother-in-law whether Velimir Toshkovic ever wrote a book.
That would be interesting, because I know that from what Mrs. Draga Dragašević tells me, that he was involved with Voice of Canadian Serbs. You can be an editor or an...
I thought he was always on the board. He was not on the board ever? Or board directors?
For Voice of Canadian Serbs?
Oh,
That's what I have, the information.
Oh, I was thinking of defense. Yeah, but the Voice is the voice of the Defense Shield Society.
Okay, so maybe he was more active on that side.
Definitely.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
But I also wonder whether he wrote a book about his war experiences.
I know that Todorović Bora did. He was the editor, and he also wrote later on the Last Testament, I think, or Last Report, sorry.
Is that right?
A very thick book. When he was towards the end of his life in New York, it's an autobiography that his wife actually published in Kragujevac.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 2 years after his death, but he was from his biographical article that was published in Voice of Canadian Serbs.
Yes.
A few years ago, I found out that he wrote that book, and then by an accident I ran into the book as well. The book cannot be digitized because it hasn't been published here, but it is interesting how his life went and what he was doing, so maybe that was him. I don't know about Mr. Toshkovic, though. Ms. Seka Miletić probably knows more because she was involved in the care of him, right?
Yes, you might ask her.
I tried to include...
I don't know about that for sure.
Okay, so we have... This is what Mrs. Draga Dragašević gave me, who was the editor of Voice of Canadian Serbs at which time.
I see. I was looking at it. Yes, very interesting.
And then from the English section,
Right.
from 46 to 2013. So you
Right.
were right, it started in 46.
Exactly.
Um,
Okay.
So this was Joksimovic Costa was the first one that you were
Yes, I see. Right.
and
right.
then yourself, and then all these other people
Oh yeah. Plodia.
did that, and then there was an editorial board for a while. I don't know what that means.
Because
Probably
I
more
think they
of a-
didn't have anybody. You know what I mean? Like after
Mhm.
probably too.
And then Draga takes
Naga
over
took it over. Yeah.
in
She
the
did.
80s.
Did a very good job. Yes.
So, do you remember any of these people that any of the editors afterwards when you stopped working for the English section?
Oh, I know all these. I don't know this person.
Mr. Bielic Dusan?
I don't know that man.
Okay.
No. Nor this woman.
She's the current one right now.
Yeah, I know
Susanna
that woman.
Sugar,
No.
I met him. He came actually. He's working with on the editorial board of Ljudi Govore, or people say it's a literary magazine, an annual
really?
one, right?
Oh,
that
right.
is started in 2008.
Oh, really?
And he, being the art historian, he is contributing mostly on that subject
I
to
see.
the
Mm.
and the only reason why I know him or of him is that he came here to promote the magazine with a group of people, with his colleagues,
Interesting.
and to raise the subscription. And then they came to the museum and we talked a little bit about the upcoming exhibit, and so
Right.
it was interesting conversation. Do you know, I mean, since you have been a journalist and a librarian most of your professional life, what would you say publishing in Serbian language in Serbian communities Canada-wide looked like in retrospect?
I don't think we're talking just English now.
Well,
It's very little, precious little.
precious little in English that was
Yes,
by
yeah.
Serbs.
Oh, by Serbs,
Okay.
definitely. Yes.
Okay.
To this day, there's not much at all.
Is there one of the topics that I will have to that I started writing the lecture notes on is the publishing activities of Serbs in Canada, as well as the publishing activities of Serbs in Windsor. Now, Serbs in Windsor I can talk to,
Right.
but Serbs in Canada and publishing activities I have only to rely on the Canadian historians writing about the same subject for a variety of communities. So not exclusively about us,
Oh, I see.
but about Ukrainians, about
Yes.
Chinese, and how their publishing activities chronologically were placed in Canada. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that subject. Do you know?
I really don't know of any other, say, Serbian publications other than this one in Windsor.
In this region?
Yeah, I don't know of any other. There must be.
There has, well, from what we have gathered for the research for this project, is that in Welland, Ontario, Canadian Herald was the first newspaper in Serbian that started in parallel with the activities of Serbian National Shield Society, and it was run by Mićun Pavićević between 1916 and 1918. And when the Serbian National Shield Society, after the First World War, stopped with their activities of gathering the Serbian volunteer soldiers to send them over there,
Yes.
and collecting for Serbian Red Cross
Oh, yes,
humanitarian
yes.
aid, then when all of that First World War stopped, the Serbian National Shield Society stops, Canadian Herald newspaper stops,
I've never heard of that.
until 1934, when Mr. Božidar Marković started the Voice of Canada, Glas Kanade,
I
in
see.
Toronto. And I can find his biography, and I can find out more about him through Olga, his daughter.
Sure.
But because he was also the member of Serbian National Shield Society that was fairly passive at that time, I don't know why he wanted to start the newspaper, but he did. And between December 27th, 1934, until November 15, 1945. Voice of Canada existed as a weekly and existed without interruption. So now, when I found out that he was an active member of the board of Serbian National Shield Society for all that time as well, something like Mr. Pero Bulat, they were fairly similar to me in descriptions of them. And when Mr. Pero Bulat got involved with the society decides to purchase Voice of Canada from Mr. Božidar Markovic, and we have the documentation of that. They paid him 3,000 Canadian dollars at the time, and incorporated the Voice of Canada to become their official medium of information, because they realized, well, that's the only way that people will know about us if we have our own newspaper.
Oh, I see.
So then, because Pero Bulat was influential here from Windsor, he believed that he has enough of a strong team, to take over, move the newspaper from Toronto to Windsor.
Oh, is that?
And then that's how it started from our research. But also, Canadians wrote about our publishing activities to be fairly upbeat. That's how they described it, because there was also a communist side to our communities in Toronto, in Hamilton, in other places where communist-oriented societies, so-called cultural societies that propagated communist ideas, they also had their newspapers. It's not Nasha Reč. Nasha Reč is the newspaper from England, but something like that, something similar, and entitled, and that the Voice of Canadian Serbs was trying to fight that particular publication. So there was rivalry going on,
right.
And that's why I asked you, has there been a rivalry or any other competitor to Voice of Canadian Serbs in Windsor in that time? And we discovered there was Serbia, but we can't find out more about that. So that's what I would basically try to analyze in the lecture about the publishing activities. Draga is more of an expert on that, because she said that she wrote a lecture on publishing activities of Serbs. I just don't know which angle she wrote it from.
Right.
I would write it, or it would be a video lecture basically with PowerPoint presentation, and then I would put my voice in with certain text and images to put it on our website so that people can get informed.
Right.
But to be able to collect more detailed information that I can draw facts from rather than just assumptions is what is important to me, because I haven't found too many of the texts that you can rely on.
I couldn't help you in that area at all. I'm sorry.
How about?
I guess I'm not very political.
Yeah, I'm not either. It's just really interesting to know how many politically colored publications were coming out at different times.
I have no idea.
Because you can explore political background of publications, as well as because they had to also have a certain number of pages that were dedicated to the local activities, right? Okay, well, how about let's move on to maybe you writing the publications such as this one, the 29th Annual SNF Golf Tournament. How did you choose to accept to edit something like this?
Well, because I always felt like I was happy to do it. It was a volunteer. Just people were doing. I always figured this. I'm not a good cook. I'm not going to the kitchen to help with these social events, or because these are like golf tournaments and basketball tournaments and singing federation concerts. So this was my contribution. I would do the books or help them do the books or show them how to do the books. I remember one morning I got up and went in my mailbox, looked in my mailbox, and there was something that somebody had left overnight they wanted me to edit. When there, came to, you see, I would not only help write these souvenir books, but What was I going to say now? I've forgotten.
You didn't only help write them or edit them, but maybe
I was going to say something else.
look for sponsors or ads.
Oh yeah, my husband and I, my late husband and I.
Mhm.
Judah was the master collector of, and I can tell you a very funny story, of ads. I had to go with him place to place to collect ads.
Uh-huh.
He was very, we're talking about active, he was very active. Here's a Rendezvous Tavern where they got the houses now. You
Mhm.
see that was used to be.
Mhm.
We went to the funeral home one time to get an ad, the Anderson Funeral Home.
Mhm.
And the man says to us, well, I have to only give you half a page this time because he said, business is down. Well, I had to sort of laugh to myself. This is a funeral home, right? I said, what do you mean the business is down? But it's not funny at all when you hear his answer. He said, you know all the men that died in the war, Second World War?
Yeah.
He said about this time they would be expiring and we would have all those funerals. Who would think of such a thing?
I would
And
never.
as a matter of fact, he only that year gave us a half a page. He usually gave us a whole page.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that ridiculous?
That is, yeah.
Isn't that ridiculous?
If you're not in that industry, why would you think in such terms?
I know, but isn't that interesting little story? I never forgot that. Now, what I was going to tell you about something about the books, but
Collecting.
that I would write all for the Serbobran. You know what I mean? That the
Yes.
publication.
Mhm.
What I would do not only I had to promote these events by writing the articles for how we're preparing here in Windsor
Okay.
for this event and who's on the committee and
Mhm.
pictures of the committee and directions of how to get to Windsor and I would do all the publicity for all those.
Oh, I see.
I would
So
send all that.
how many can you tell
Oh
me?
my goodness
you mentioned
gracious!
that you
I'm
did
going to
much
home and
more.
find. Don't you have all these? You don't have all these souvenir books?
Not all of them. We have maybe 10 altogether.
Oh, okay. Perhaps you have all that.
There's more then, I guess.
Oh, but I'm thinking now just of the federations, Serb National Federation events.
Mhm.
But actually, do you have all the Windsor publications?
I have Windsor basketball and golf.
But there was like a church.
Now, maybe you can clarify this
There is
for
a
me.
church memorial thing.
Gračanica?
25 years.
25 years, yes.
I'm not sure. I'm
Yep.
going to go home and I'll find all of that.
What we have for you that your name appeared as an editor
Oh, yes.
is this one, and
Right.
then Serbian Singing Society Gračanica is celebrating 50 years of song,
All right. Oh, yeah, that's that one.
right? And
Right.
that's where we were able to actually find your name
Oh, okay.
as a part of the editorial board,
Oh,
or
okay,
as the
there's
only
another,
editor.
but I helped Father Božo, what is his last name?
Bakajlić?
Yes.
Mhm.
He asked me to edit, and I did. It's called Church Art, or whatever. What is it? I don't know the exact. I can't remember the exact name. I have a copy of it at home. There's probably a copy here.
Gračanica's church bulletin?
No. This is a whole book. It's called Church Art. It's here somewhere, and I have one at home.
Okay, that'll be interesting
It
because I
was
haven't run
written
into that.
by. They wanted, in other words, somebody had written a book about about history, actually, of Serbian art in churches,
There was an exhibition that museum put up as
and he.
church architecture in North America.
Yeah, it's that book. It's blue,
Okay.
and it's written by somebody else. But Father here was having it. Couldn't translate it English. Maybe he did, and then I edited it. Anyhow, I'll bring your copy, all right?
Okay. Yes, please. So you say that
there's one here.
you've done quite a
Oh,
number
oh,
of
yes,
publication
and,
of the
analysts.
sports activities
Yes.
or
analysts.
sport events, and then
And Serb National Federation.
Okay. Any other type of publication for the Serbian community that you've done that you remember?
No, the church book and the books for the SNF tournaments. That's how you want to put it. SNF tournaments, because they're, you know, golf tournaments, basketball, and there's bowling.
Bowling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm,
Okay. And for I forgot about that. I used to write for but that has nothing to do with the Windsor. Serb National Federation. Their publication comes out of Detroit.
American Serbobrand?
No.
It's different.
This is, what is it called? My goodness, I did that for years too. We used to even publish it here because it was cheaper. We would have it printed here. Yeah, they would bring the material from Detroit, and I would take it to a printer here, and then they would pick it up.
Okay. Have you participated in creating or editing any other publication for, let's say, St. Dimitria Church or Gračanica Church, any of their bulletins, newsletters, or even Circle of Serbian Sisters?
Oh, goodness, yes. I forgot about that. I'm laughing because I was going crazy with the cookbooks.
Yes, we have that cookbook.
Proofreading it and proofreading it. And
I heard that book really sold out when it was done.
yes, it was sold out because Stana Lonchar was still she's a president, I should say, is president of the Serbian Circle of Sisters.
Right.
And she promoted that book. She pushed that project and got me involved by editing. How many hours I spent on looking at recipes and proofreading them. You know how difficult to proofread that?
The recipe,
one
yes.
quarter of this and one half of that. And of course, there were still mistakes. You know, there inevitably are. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know. And you cannot
proofread
really help it.
how many times still have
But
one.
when I met her, I asked for their permission to digitize the cookbook.
Oh, yes.
And they actually didn't want to have it digitized. I think they might be getting ready for another round of publishing that one.
Oh, yes.
Which that will be quite interesting to see
Yes.
what kind of edition will it
Yeah, that's the
look
other
like
thing
in
that I
that.
helped on. How many hours, I can't tell you how many hours I spent with her in that cookbook.
Well, it was a success from what she tells us.
Oh, yes, she sold over 1,000 copies.
Yeah, about that,
That's true.
she said. Did you write for American Serbobrand maybe, or any other?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, all the time. I forgot about that, you know, if you want to mention that. For I'm always a reporter for the Serbobrand, yeah. You know, on our board of directors here for our lodge.
Mm-hmm.
For lodge number 345, I've been for years reporting, you know, so I send articles all the time to Serbian. In fact, I've got to tell you one that's, you know, personal that I have to get to. It's about my niece. But when I hang up, I'll tell you about her what she's doing in Serbia, which will interest you very much.
Sure. So you've collaborated with Mr. Blažo Brković, who is currently...
Yes.
Right.
Well, he's a very good friend.
He's also the museum board member here.
Yes.
And I've been chasing him forever to come in and talk to me about not only about his writing activities, because he wrote a lot of obituaries for Voice of Canadian Serbs.
He has written every one. He is... You'll get to know him, I hope. He has a memory. Anything you want to know, do you know that?
Yes, I've got a glimpse of that.
He will say to me, Rose, you and Judah were married on May 11, 1963. Now that has not been mentioned to him, you know what I mean? I've been married, well, George is gone, but it'll be 50 years now. And he can remember not only my wedding day, ages of my children, your children,
People told me that about
So
him.
if you need to have anything verified or you want to ask anybody anything, ask Bob
I would
Berkovich.
love to get him in here to not only talk about his writing, but also about the history of cultural societies here in Windsor, because everybody calls him the Windsor historian.
Yeah, he is.
Because of that ability to memorize all the...
Yes, I was promised so that.
Right.
It's incredible.
I know, and it's wonderful that we have
So,
people who want to record the history of the community,
right.
whether that's for personal sort of pleasure
Sure.
or they
Right.
come up with books like Mr. Branko Malešević.
Mhm.
He says, I'm not a historian, I'm just recording history the way I see it or the way it appears.
See,
right?
this is what my brother-in-law has been doing all these years since, and that's why people keep calling him.
But yeah, because otherwise, if we don't write it down,
Exactly. Yeah.
where it just flies away like
Right.
clouds, and
Right.
then nobody's to retrieve them ever again.
No, I know.
So hopefully this project will help, and with your interviews and
Sure.
your information, that all of this will be available somehow in one way or another, and just to give the basis, a foundation of information for whoever wants to start researching on the same subject later, that we have the body of it that is here,
Definitely.
maybe raw,
Right.
but go ahead, do the research, whatever you need. Because I would like to entice the public to start researching not only their family histories, but it is important that if you were born and raised in one community and spend most of your life in that community, that there's a trace of you. That that there's a trace of the people that you loved and that you lived with,
Right.
and to me, I mean, okay, glass does a lot of that in one way or another, but also all of you who wrote anything. I mean, it can be just a simple pamphlet commemorating certain event, but we know that that event happened.
Right.
So with this,
you need proof, of course.
right? So. Is there any other book or other publication or something that you wrote, like a fiction book of work of fiction, for example?
No, I haven't written. I always say, you think you're going to, but you never do it.
Because it takes a long time.
It's a shame, but it's a shame. The only thing I have personal is like these articles that I wrote, you see. You know what I mean? It's all about family and whatever. You could look at them. Do you have any leisure? You have no leisure.
Well, I don't have a lot of leisure, but I'd like to read them.
Sure, not gonna have.
I have two more
leisure.
weeks before I start
you
working.
told me.
Yes. So.
One interesting thing I didn't tell you, but it has to do. It does have to do with writing, but not to Windsor though.
Mm-hmm.
When I was young, I went to Yugoslavia. 1953, as a matter of fact, or not 54, was one of the guys.
I think I heard. Yes, tell me. I think I heard, but you tell me.
I can't even remember the name of that organization now. Come on, what's wrong with me? Experiment in International Living.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether it still exists or not. This was the organization. It was started by, I don't know whether he started it, but Shriver, what was his name? Sergeant Shriver. I can't remember how to spell his last name, but Maria Shriver is his daughter. She's, in the Kennedy family.
Mm-hmm.
So that was this organization. And you went to Yugoslavia, or in many other places. People went to Norway, all over Europe. And just young people went and lived in homes. I lived with the family, and I'm ashamed to say I do not recall their name. He was Croatian, she was Serbian, and they were in the film industry, and this was in Zagreb, and traveled all over, not all over, but we saw quite a bit of, we were there for 6 weeks in the summer.
Okay.
So we went from, what is that? In Slovenia. What is the name of it? What's the Ljubljana?
Mm-hmm.
So went
Capital
to
city.
Ljubljana, Of course, Belgrade, Sarajevo, up and down the coast.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to tell you? Oh, in regard to writing,
Mm-hmm.
I wrote from that trip. I sent back articles to the Hammond Times.
Okay.
So when I came back, maybe I should put this in paper or anything. People were calling me a communist and all kinds of things.
What?
People in the Serbian community.
I'm sorry.
I'm
You were there
serious.
for 6 weeks?
I am telling you that truth, yes. And I said to this one fellow that I knew, I said, you just say that to me one more time, I'm going to slap your face or something. What are you what are you bothering me about, talking about? Just because I'd written
Oh my
in
gosh.
in the local newspaper
Yes.
some favorable things about,
Life
favorable
there.
things I saw there.
Yeah.
And that's how incensed they were.
Oh
Or-
my goodness. Oh
mental,
my goodness.
as the kids say.
I heard a story that you perhaps have interviewed
And I
Tito.
forgot about that. Yeah, so we went to see Tito. We were accept, what do you want to call it? Received, because it was
Okay.
a very short interview. It was very interesting. I will just mention this very briefly. They told us to be in a certain place at a certain time in Pula, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this boat.
Mhm.
They told us which hotel to stay in. We stayed in a hotel.
Okay.
And because we've been traveling around the country, we were all, grubby and dirty. Not dirty, but you know what I mean. So, but anyhow, we were washing our clothes and pressing. Young people, right? Washing our clothes and pressing them that night.
Uh-huh.
And a boat. We were told we'd go to a certain place at a certain time, and the boat picked us up and took us to Brioni.
Brioni, yes.
And so then we were escorted into this beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the marble, fireplaces and whatever, but they just took us in this one room. Well, first we were shown around the gardens and the plants from all over the world and
Mhm.
labeled, and
Mhm.
then they took us in this room, conference room, I guess it was, and Tito came in with an interpreter and a lawyer. I don't know what he needed a lawyer for. But we were told beforehand that we could only ask a couple of questions, and we had to sign the questions,
Mm-hmm.
before we went in. And so all I can remember from that really is they were just general, and then we were asked when a Yugoslav group might come to the United States, and he said, well, we'd have to ask McCarthy about that. I remember that. Remember that distinctly. And they just asked us where we were from, what our backgrounds were, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, would you like, if you wanted to take any photographs, we went out on the balcony. And he had these two big dogs.
Yeah.
And he was a very handsome man. He was, I remember he was strong, looking, and this beige-colored suit on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have a film. My sister
Really?
was with me on the trip, and I have a film. I haven't looked at it in so many years. I fear. I don't know whether the film deteriorates or not. I know it's in the proper can.
If it's in a
But
proper can, it should
I
last
wonder
for
if
100
it's-
years.
Yeah, I should have somebody.
That is. Can you imagine that?
Well,
A
yeah.
bunch of youth have the opportunity to speak with the president of a country.
Yes,
First of all,
right,
it's
right.
an
And
accomplishment, and
and that's-
especially
It's hilarious when the picture taking. I said
Mhm.
there are about 20. I can't remember the number exactly. There were a large number,
Mhm.
and all with cameras. You know what I mean? It's like because when it was interesting. Yes.
But your group, you keep referring to you as plural. Your group, there was 20 of the
Oh, they
youth
weren't Serbians. No, they were
from all over the United States or all over the world.
Well, of course, my group was all local. I mean, like people from Chicago or
see.
Hammond or just the area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was more than
Oh, I
just
should
yourself.
take that back. Somebody was from Michigan.
Okay, but
Some
the
of us are-
Americans,
all
right?
Americans. Oh,
Okay,
yes, yeah,
okay.
yeah, just Americans.
Well, that's really an interesting
the
opportunity.
experiment international living is what it was. What
And
it is. that still exists.
these other kids that you went with, were they all as well interested in journalism, or they had other
No,
interests?
they were mostly, I would say, rich Americans who, university students, who had nothing, say, better to do, or their parents wanted to get rid of them, or some darn thing. No, they weren't.
It would be nice to be able to read these articles that you had. Did you keep them?
I think I still have them if I can find them. I'm not very organized.
You know, this
but I will look for them.
It is common that the writers who are really prolific don't really keep their stuff organized. It's the family members that do.
You know what's interesting about newspaper work? It was like once you put out the paper, when it came out daily,
yeah,
you never looked at it.
Really?
Right, because you wrote what you had to write, and you were, I guess, tired of it. I don't know what it is.
Maybe.
But I never looked at it after that.
A lot of artists say that they don't look back to what they've done.
Right.
So
you hear movie stars saying
they say that. Whether that's really true or not, I don't know.
I think they tire of it, the project.
Possibly, because it's a long project, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I believe.
But this would be, and I heard this story that you interviewed Tito from Mr. Bogdanchuk.
Oh, I see.
When I was asking him, and he was my main source of information for a lot of the research that I started.
I'm sure.
And he says, you talk to Ms. Rose Kosanovich, she's probably the most educated, most educated and most professional writer that the Serbian publication had in the city.
Yeah, probably the most experienced, definitely, in Windsor.
Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious, it says not after 2.
I'm sorry, I kept you that long.
And I have to